Hey everyone, it's Mian, and this chapter is the second part of UX design principles. The first principle of this chapter is accessibility, which is a really important aspect of UX design. Through accessibility, we make sure that our final design could help everyone who might use the platform. I will explain what it means in the particular examples. In the case of accessibility, we are responsible to deal with colors in the first place. The first problem is color contrast, which affects almost all users. This case is obvious, and we can see on the first look that something is not okay with the first button, but there might be more difficult color combinations where we are simply not sure if the color meets the contrast ratio. For those cases, you can use external platforms to check the contrast ratio or Figma plugins. This is my most favorite tool, but there are tons of other websites that you can use for this purpose. But WebAIM is really simple in my point of view. You have to just copy the HEX code of colors, and here you can see the contrast ratio score, and below you can see cases where you can use those colors without a problem with contrast. So the requirements are a little bit different for small or larger text or UI components. You can also choose colors through the color picker here and customize colors, copy HEX codes and use them in your prototyping. We will use a software called Figma, which we will get acquainted with in the next module. As we have mentioned, color contrast affects almost all people, but we should take care also about minor groups. Let's think about people with some kind of color blindness like protonomia. You should be very careful with choosing a color palette to make an interface accessible also for those people. Thanks to a tool called Stark, it will be much easier to empathize with those people because you can just choose the screen with the design and run a simulation of colorblind diseases. You will have a view of a user with these diseases instantly. We will go through that process during the prototyping later. For now, it's important to know that you should make the design accessible to all groups of users, even if it's a minority. But it's not only about physical handicaps. Think also about devices which are using target users. You should make your design responsive and easily adjustable for all devices, no matter if it is desktop, tablet, mobile, Apple, Samsung, or whatever. The second principle of this chapter is context. Through this design principle, we will go just very briefly. Brian Sullivan described in his book The Design Studio Method that context is the key, and I have to agree. By the way, I really recommend this book. It's one of the first books that I have read about UX design. Context basically includes all internal and external factors that influence users' behavior. It could be a mental state, health, belief, location, or device. The key takeaway from this UX design principle is that you should research your target users and try to understand the context accompanying particular user groups during, before, or after usage of your design. The next UX design principle is balance. In UX design, we understand balance as a distribution of all elements in a particular layout. Some elements seems to be bigger and heavier, other looks lighter. The distribution of those elements directly influences how the design is perceived by your users. The first is symmetrical balance. Using symmetry is the most common method to balance the layout. You match the weight of elements on the right with elements on the left side. Very common is also to center elements. As you can see in the following example, all components in the Create Account form are centered and symmetrically balanced. The second option is the opposite of symmetry, asymmetry. Repeating the symmetrical balance in all cases could be sometimes quite boring, so designers use an asymmetrical approach, but the layout still looks balanced. You can, for example, use the color or size of an object for indicating its weight. The hero section of my personal website is a great example of asymmetrical balance, where there are different objects on the both sides, but the proportions and color make the screen still balanced. And the last type is off balance, which is not so common in UX design. The field where is most common using the off-balance principle is logo design. The Nike logo is a perfect example of using off-balance to communicate motion, which is connected to sportswear directly. The reason why we don't usually use off-balance for UI design is that users might feel disharmonious, mainly people with some syndrome of searching for perfection like OCD and so on. The last but not least UX design principle for this course is white space. White space, or if you want negative space, is an area around, inside and between the design elements like text field, buttons and many more. Don't look at the white space like an empty space which has to be filled. Look at the white space as a design element. In UX design we achieve enough white space with padding, margin, letter size, spacing and line height. In the following picture you can see something that developers and designers call a box model. For us it's not that important, but it gives you a clear view of the differences between padding and margins. The more important thing is how white space looks in the practice. In the following picture you can see two screens with the same content, but example B doesn't provide enough white space. As you can see, the text and components are too big, so users might have a very cramped feelings and they simply might feel like they can't breathe. If you are not sure how big paddings or margins are set, don't panic, we will go through this topic once again in the next chapters. White space is not only a clean look of your design. With white space you can achieve and stimulate lots of other important aspects of UX. The first aspect you can improve with white space is balance. We talked about balance during the previous principles, so just briefly, white space is a very useful tool for balancing your design. The second aspect is the user's focus and understanding. Fewer elements with bigger white space help the users understand your content better. Then there is, for example, conversion, which basically means when a visitor of your website or platform completes desired goals, such as filling out a form or making a purchase. Setting a clear call to action button with enough white space around will improve the interest of the user. I believe that's all about white space for now, and it was actually the last UX design principle. To sum up UX design principles, we will face them mainly in the prototyping phase of the design process. For now, it's important to know about them and try to think about those principles every time you will be dealing with some design problem. Okay, so in this chapter we have talked about accessibility of design, presented by color contrast, color blindness simulation, and simply making interfaces accessible for all groups of users. Then we have mentioned balance, which might happen in three situations: symmetry, asymmetry, and off-balance. The last principle is white space, which is achieved by proper margins and padding in an area around, inside, and between the design elements. And thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to complete the quiz and see you soon!